Hello, everyone. I would like to welcome everyone to the Rocky Miller podcast. And of course, I'm Rocky Miller. I want to thank everybody who's tuned in today. It is 7 p.m. on a Monday, and everybody know the game is coming on here shortly. So I know you guys want to get to that. But before you get to the game, man, I wanted to have this conversation with our very special guest. And he is someone that I have enjoyed his content. I really like the banter and what he's contributed to the space. With no further ado, I'll bring my man up. PV versus everybody, also known as Lionel Mosby.
What's going on, man? How you doing, Rocky?
I got too many controls over here.
I got too many controls over here. I didn't.
Oh, okay.
I really messed up. Yeah. Too many controls, not enough control. You know what I mean?
Hey, listen, got a lot of new, nice, shiny things. So that's how it goes, though, right? You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Lionel, hey man, you're somebody that I consume your content quite a bit. I watch you and your castmates talk about PV and everything, man. Before we get started, I just want you to kind of tell us who you are and kind of explain your connection to PV.
Yeah, man. Hey, listen, I appreciate you first and foremost for having me on. Obviously, I'm always tuned into the Coach's Corner. You already know, right? You know what I mean? I'm in the comments, sometimes on the phone, right? So obviously, I definitely also appreciate what you guys do and what you guys add to the space. For me, man, I'm connected to PV. Went to Prairie View back in 2005 is when I first touched ground, actually in Prairie View. It's so funny because I'm from Monroe, Louisiana, which is North Louisiana. So me and my daddy, I talk about it all the time, even on the show.
That's
me and my dad. Listen, we used to always go to Grambling games, right? Always in the hole, always going to Alcorn out to the reservation, always shooting the Jackson, right? Of course, Bayou Classic. So I've been in a lot of different spots, right? Of course, basketball, right? We drove down to Southern to watch games. We went to Houston to watch basketball games, go to Grambling court. So we used to follow Grambling a lot, right? Growing up because it was in the area, you know what I'm saying? And so I've been connected to the SWAC. Also, we went to Dallas game, right, with Prairie View too as well back in the day. And so that's my connection to the SWAC, right? You know, I grew up in SWAC country from back in the day. All of my people, right? A lot of my people, my grandparents were involved in the civil rights movement in Monroe, Louisiana. They went to HBCUs, my aunts, my uncles, cousins, right? Got cousins, uncles went to A&T, South Carolina State, right? So, North Carolina A&T, I mean, right? So we got people that tentacles everywhere, right? That's just my family, right? You know what I mean? And so when it came time for me to make a decision, it really was out of Prairie View and Morehouse, right? Those are the two schools. Okay. Yeah, those are the two schools I was looking at the time. Benefit of Prairie View was I had an aunt who did so much tremendous work out in this area. Also in Dallas, she built subdivisions in Dallas, in South Oak Cliff. And she also built student housing down here in Prairie View. She before her time. Now people just crawling here, but she was there before the time, man. And she had connection with the vice president, the provost, right? People on campus. So she was able to help me to get some scholarship money when I was able to get connected to Prairie View. And so that was really the kind of the nail in the coffin for me choosing to come over to Prairie View. And I tell you, when we first came, it's so hilarious, man. I remember me and my dad, my mom rode down here. When we got to campus, we was like, wow, the campus is beautiful. The only thing they need is the football field. It's like, because back then it was like old black shit, right? So it's like everything else is like, man, it's pristine. It's on point. Like the campus is on point, but if they had a stadium, everything would be perfect. So I just remember that from even the first conversation, we first driving on campus, and so to see obviously what the university is now is great. So that's how I got to Prairie View, you know what I'm saying, back in 2005, and I'm an alum, I'm a graduate alum. All right, you know what I'm saying? I'm not an alum who attend. I got my degree, you feel me? So
as I get acclimated with the HBCU space, I understand that they're all family, but that's a distinguished difference.
Hey, listen,
and some.
that definitely is a big difference. You go around, right? Fam, talk about how many graduates they got. How Prairie View talk about the alums, Southern University system. They talk about the graduates though. They ain't talking about the real alum. The real alum is a bigger number because who done walked on the campus and been there for a year or 2 or 3 and didn't get their degree? Oh, the impact is huge for HBCUs, right? So yeah, man. But I'm a graduate. I got my degree.
Well, so Lionel, my connection, I have a very special connection to PV. And it started actually in 2019 when my youngest daughter, we started doing college visits. And so we had planned to go some other places, you know, but her first stop was Prairie View. And we went to Prairie View. At the time, I had a nephew going to Prairie View. Met up with my nephew. We took a tour of the campus. We showed her what was going on. And on our way back from Prairie View, she was like, "Daddy, I don't need to go nowhere else. This is where I want to go right here." You know, I'm saying, "You sure about that? You don't want to try?" You know, because I was open to. I wanted her to go to a HBCU, but I was open to other options. But she, to her credit, she wanted to go to a HBCU. She wanted HBCU experience. She went, she grew up going to a high school that was 99% non-Black. And so she wanted an HBCU experience. And so and again, she chose Prairie View, and I think she has really, really enjoyed her choice. Now, we did this when she was a junior. She ended up with graduating, had to go through COVID and all that. She graduated 2021, and so she enrolled in 2021. So she's a senior this year, and she's getting ready to get out of there. Awesome. But she has thoroughly enjoyed herself at Prairie View. The camaraderie on campus, in her opinion, is second to none. And I've watched her grow and be part of something that she'll be part of for the rest of her life. And that's the really unique aspect of HBCUs that I think. I have friends that graduated from prestigious PWIs all over the country. But one thing about the HBCU experience for Black people in particular, there's a connection there. There's a camaraderie there that I don't see with my other friends who graduated from PWIs. They may have never been back to homecoming. They, you know what I mean? They don't, you know, and so with that being said, I think it's a really special experience, and I'm very happy that my youngest daughter got a chance to be a part of it. And so that's awesome. That was great. So I'm always gonna root for Prairie View in that regard. One of the things that when coming in this space, I had my understanding what Prairie View was. You got to remember, I graduated high school in 1988. I was a football player that was recruited, but I wasn't recruited by any Black colleges, to be perfectly honest with you. I went to Tyler Junior College, and then shortly after I entered junior college, then I want to say a couple years later, Prairie View's program folded. I folded, stopped playing football, whatever. And then you come back and Prairie View starts it back up, I want to say 94, 95. And then you have that long streak of ineptitude where they set a record for not winning a game. I mentioned that to say this. That's been a long time in Texas of that stain is still kind of with the program here in Texas as a football school. And though they've had some success after, after getting scholarships back and even winning a conference championship, I believe, in that, between then and now. But it's still the perception here in Texas, Lionel, is a struggle to get them on footing with a lot of the other FCS schools who are, I would say, do very well in the FCS football, but for a lot of their recruits, Prairie View is probably a better fit for a lot of their recruits and probably could put Prairie View in a better position. How do you feel about that statement?
Yeah, I feel like it's a fair statement and assessment. Especially for the general people, and like you say, right? You're somebody who graduated in 1988, right? You know what I mean? So it's relative to the time, right? The time period and the connection with those people who remember those days. When I first even enrolled in PV, right? Even though I had even come up in the SWAC and I had gone to games, I have gone to State Fair Classic multiple times. It didn't even register to me that from a football standpoint, particularly, that Prairie View was this perennial loser, right? You know what I'm saying? Like that didn't register to my mind, even though I technically had gone through and experienced, right, SWAC football throughout that period of time, right? You know what I mean? And so I think there's also a generation of people who they also just don't have that connection with it, right? It's not that Prairie View is a perennial loser, right? I think they just haven't seen Prairie View as a perennial winner. If you get my drift, right? So it's just like any other program that just hasn't gotten over the hump, right? Just like a Morgan State or just like Alabama A&M or whoever, right? You would look at and see as a program that there's a middle of the pack team, right? And so I feel like a lot of people in my generation and even now on younger than me, they don't have that connection. It's just PV needs to get to the place to where they're an actual winner, right? You know what I'm saying? If that makes sense.
Yeah, well, I agree with you because it's funny, as a football school, in Texas, it's a lower tiered program in comparison to Sam Houston, Stephen F. Austin, Charleston State. You understand what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
You view it as such, as a lower tier football program, right? And I think in large part because of the history. But amongst the SWAC, I agree with you. It's not seen as a loser, more of it as it's seen as an irrelevant program, in my opinion. Like it's not relevant as some of the other schools in the lexicon of HBCU football. I'll just say that it's not. And this getting to one of my questions is that with that being the case, with Prairie View really not really having one rivalry, to be honest with you, which is TSU. The rivalry with Grambling historically, let's be honest, is not a rivalry. That game has been dominated by Grambling over the course of 50 years. So why was there a need for you to come up with a handle or saying PV versus everybody? Because I don't think people were necessarily against Prairie View, but I think PV versus everybody also embodies the attitude of Prairie View football fans as they approach and as they're making this march to greatness.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, right? And I think the answer goes into my thoughts and feeling about why, in many people's eyes in the SWAC, PV is looked at as an irrelevant program, right? Because you name like a Sam Houston or Tarleton State or the SFAs, right? It's not as if Prairie View in the past 25 years has not played these programs, right? Being competitive, right? Even beating some of these programs. So what's the reason that it's still this irrelevancy in many people's mind? My assessment, right? It's the same thing that I think about when I think about how they talk about Black fathers, for example, or Black men. It's who is controlling the narrative and who is telling the story, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go look at the reports that have been done about fatherhood between Black men, white men, Hispanic men, and first of all, I lift up all men and all fathers, obviously, right? But now when we talk about Black father and Black fatherhood, when they look at who are the most involved in their kids' life, whether they're in the house or whether they're actually out of the house, is actually Black fathers. But now that's not the actual narrative and story that's actually told in the general population. And now, even though those facts are actually out, right? People still talk as if that's actually not the reality. You get what I'm saying? That is the same reason why a PV versus everybody was something that I felt needed to be started, right? Because the issue that Prairie View had always had was just they never told their own story, right? We never created our own, we never held our own narrative, right? To tell our real history, our real story, our real facts, right? Of what has been in the past, right? What is now, right? And so that is what we lost, because even off of the 2009 championship, the issue of why you didn't see anything coming out, well, I look at this like, hey, that's our fault, right? Because again, we didn't control our story. We didn't tell our narrative, right? And so that was one huge aspect of it. And then the other thing was, hey, I'm a guy who I support the team, right? I support PV athletics, and I'm enjoying podcasts like yours. You know, I think HBCU Coach Quarter was started at that time, right? But you know, I'm enjoying different podcasts and different stuff. And at the end of the day, what I realized was I'm really coming on the podcast a lot of times, just like anybody from any other school, whether you're coming from Jackson or Alabama State or whatever. I enjoy learning about everybody, but I'm also seeking that info about what's going on at PV, right? What Coach Jackson got going on, what Dooley got going on, what Bubba got going on, like what we gonna be looking like. And guess what? I wasn't getting that information. You know what I'm saying? And anytime I got anything, it was just trinkle here and there, right? It was like you say, irrelevancy. You know what I'm saying? And so at that point, I was like, you know what? I'm really coming and looking for this. Maybe I can be the one that provide that, right? Because if I'm looking for it, there got to be other people that's looking for that same thing as well. And so those two things I feel like is what collided, you know, to be like, hey, it's PV versus everybody.
Hey, I dig it. And again, I think it's the mindset that a lot of PV fans have as they're making this march to greatness. Because as I talk about me graduating in 1988, I probably have 15 friends, very close friends that graduated from PV or attended PV, and they're Prairie View supporters. And the one thing that kind of surprises me, and I'll say this, Lionel, I'll even admit this, they're probably my more successful friends, to be perfectly honest with you.
Hey, it's good to have successful friends. I know where they graduate from. It's good to have successful friends. Okay?
No, but what I'm saying is that the PV grads tend to be, you know, at the top of their game. I'll just put it like that. Let's put it like now. Again, I don't know if that's coincidence. I don't know that's a culture of the school. So here's another thing coming from the outside, Lionel. I didn't realize that largely. Maybe you can answer this question. PV in the realm of HBCUs is seen as an academic school, right? Explain to people who don't understand it, because I'm from Texas, been knowing about PV all my life. I never knew it as this huge academic brand. Why do people see PV as an academic school in the SWAC?
I think that may go back to kind of the decisions that were made right in the past to say, well, we're gonna put our full focus on right academics and not also put our full weight behind athletics. I think that's a part of that conversation of why, you know, that's like that as well. And I think PV is very competitive, right? You know, when I was in school, man, one thing that was stood out so clear, and even to this day, right? I talk about all the time. Anytime I meet anybody younger that's looking at nursing school, right? Like everybody in the nursing program at one point, right? They all passed NCLEX, the whole class that year, right? And I was like, wow, that's crazy. You know what I'm saying? So I'm like, PV has been competitive, right? And in the mind of a lot of PV alum, they do see themselves and look at themselves with this braggadocious mindset, especially in terms of academics, right? You know, in terms of, you know, going out and getting it from a standpoint of what their career entails and what their career holds, right? And so now we're just seeking, and an older alum actually kind of explained this to me, and I'm like, yo, that makes so much sense, right? Of why, you know, a lot of people are really connecting with Coach Jack, because what he's doing from the sports standpoint, or football standpoint, is really the mindset of a lot of PV grads when it comes to the academic side of things. Like the way talking kind of like braggadocious like that in the football space, that's how a lot of people feel when in terms of the academic space, right? You know what I'm saying? And so we resonate with it, right? You know what I mean? And so yeah, man, it is an academic school. It is a proud school, and we have a desire right now pushing to be a R1 level institution. So, you know, from an academic standpoint, we definitely want to be great. But now we want to be great at all things, right? You know what I'm saying? It's no point of being second in any class, right? No, be your best in every single thing that you can do. So
yeah, and that's one of the things that, again, I think worthy of PV grads and alumni tooting their horn, because it is an academic school. Now, this is just my understanding of SWAC admissions generally. PV has a competitive admissions process. There are a number of schools in the SWAC that don't have a competitive admissions process.
Just got more competitive too. They just raised the bar, by the way, again.
Do you think that holds PV back because they have a competitive admissions process? Does that prevent them from being
I don't think so.
they want to be academically?
Nah, I don't think so. I don't think so. Again, I think you should be able to hold water and chew gum at the same time. Like, I don't think you need to, in a sense, I don't think you need to dumb yourself down. I don't know if that's the correct terminology to use.
I understand.
I don't think that has anything to do with why PV hasn't been able to get over this hump, right? You know, in many of the sports, right, we've gotten over the hump, right? So it's not as if it hasn't been done. We haven't sustained success, right? And obviously football is the big thing at the end of the day, right? I always know in the SWAC mind, the HBCU mind, football is the king, right? So no matter how many championships you won, other thing, none of that matter, right? It's like, what have you done in football? So I get that, I understand, right? And so no, I don't believe that, right? I think Coach Jackson is showing you right now that what we needed, one, was somebody with experience. Since Coach Frazier, we have not had a head coach who has had experience, right? We've had first-time coaches for the last 3 head coaches. Now, they learned what they needed to learn here and went on and did their thing, right? You know what I'm saying? But we didn't get them after they learned. We got them when they were learning, right? You know what I mean? We're now getting Coach Jackson after he's learned, right? And so I think we just also have to make a decision to say, hey, if we want to go to a certain level, we got to hire a certain way, right? You got to look for a certain type of coach in order to lead you, right? And so, no, I don't think that holds us back at all. I think we can be there's a lot of smart Black and white and brown people out here. That's just facts, all right? And the Texas is a boatload of them. Very competitive. Listen, look at some of the guys that's being recruited, man, out of Texas, even going Power 4, right? G5. Them guys competitive on the field and in the classroom. Like, they're on point. So no, it's a lot of guys that can play ball who will get in PV flying colors.
Yeah, it was, like I said, it was just interesting to me to when I went and talked to other fan groups talking about, and of course, mentioning that my daughter attended PV and things of that nature. People would always hold PV in high regard academically. And it, not that I didn't hold PV in high regard academically. Obviously, my daughter chose and I supported her going there. But it was just refreshing to hear that amongst the HBCU populace, PV seen as an academic juggernaut, and that's also how sometimes they're dismissive toward them athletically as well. You know.
I get it.
But again, so Lionel, let me ask you this. So as PV, okay, I'm gonna go back and then we're gonna last year under Coach Bubba, you had a very bold prediction before the season.
That's what I do.
You went out and had championship shirts printed and on sale.
And got still in the closet right there too.
Well, where did that come from?
So this the thing, right? My thing is this. First of all, you're never gonna hit a goal you don't aim for. That's not how life works, right? Again, I said it on the show many times before, period, right? Now, whether we talking about football or life, period, it don't matter, right? If you ain't aiming for something, you ain't gonna hit it. It's just that's how life works, right? And so the reality is, right, we're trying to change a narrative, right? We're trying to change a mindset. My conversation is not for whether somebody else in the SWAC think I should say something. That ain't who I'm saying stuff for, right? I'm saying there's a group of PV people who we already on the same page. We already trekking together, right? We already in mindset that no, we should be winning every year, right? We should be in the top conversation all the time. That's already the normal conversation. But now there's another set of PV people, right? You talk about when you graduated, talk about, people who grew up during that time, those class, right? Their mindset may be different because they have a different experience. You got to realize, even when I came to PV, I was on campus. I was a sports editor, by the way, at Prairie View. I was a sports editor for the school newspaper too. I didn't share that, right? So I was there at all the events. When the basketball team was winning championships, I was there. When the football team got over the hump and then we won a SWAC, I was there. So my experience at PV in the first place during my period of time was a lot of winning. It wasn't a lot of losing, it was a lot of winning, right? So I'm like, we got to change the mindset and the narrative. And that's so I have to do that for other people to realize, like, hey, no, just like any other school here, nobody would trip if they heard people from Grambling right now start to say, man, we're going to win a SWAC this year. And we're going to win a Celebration Bowl. Because in their mind, they feel like, well, Grambling deserves to be able to do that. Not based on what Mickey has done at all, though, right?
Yeah.
You follow what I'm saying, right?
Yeah,
it's not based on what Mickey done. It's actually based on what Eddie Robinson did. You get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They're leaning that based
on brand alone is what you're saying. On
exactly.
Brand alone.
It's based on brand alone that I say, hey, if a Grambling or say a Southern or say a Jackson or a South Carolina State or, okay, cool. You can say what you want to say, but when if certain programs talk like that, right? It seems that's where the issue, and that's where the pushback comes from. But my point is, we have to look at ourselves as that type of program, right? And that's where the conversation, that's where creating this stuff, that's what it's about, right? It really wasn't about the result per se, right? It wasn't about the result that came out of it. Obviously, I want the result. Let's be clear. You know what I'm saying? It's not about the result, though. It's about the people that say, you know what, you're right. I can just as much as I can stand up, like you say, academically and say, man, I can stand in any room with somebody from Texas A&M or UT or whatever, right, in the boardroom. I can also stand up in the same way and say, hey, listen, we the top program in the FCS in the state of Texas. I can also say that as well, right? And so that's the whole point behind that, right? Yeah.
And to be honest with you, in the last 5 years since I've been watching HBCU football, and particularly the SWAC, the only programs that have surpassed the success of Prairie View, to be perfectly honest, Jackson State and FAMU.
FAMU, yeah, that's reality.
FAMU won in 23, but all the other time I've been watching Jackson State and has been the most dominant program. They won 3 out of the last 4 years. So when you talk about programs and programs that should be more relevant, I agree. And they did it under the guidance of 2 separate coaches. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I think Bubba played 1 year, and then Coach Dooley played another year. So let me ask you this before we talk about the next thing. What is it gonna take? Because this is the one thing that bothers me about it, is that no matter up to this point, no matter what success PV has, it doesn't change the energy of the fan base. Mm-hmm. And I'm not talking about the diehards. I'm not talking about the diehards. I'm talking about the people, the casual PV fan, the casual PV supporter. They are like on a constant wait and see kind of motto. They're not getting behind the team the way I think they should and could have in past years. What's going to happen for them to change that?
You got to win. I mean, that's We all know the answer to that question. It's very simple. It's 3 letters. WIN. It is what it is, right? That hump that I keep talking about, right? The hump that I'm talking about is the SWAC championship, right?
Oh,
Getting over that hump, winning the SWAC, winning the Celebration Bowl, right? That changes everything, right? And so even these programs, we talk about other programs that have had success over long periods of time, right? Well, Jackson's won 3 of the last 4, but now if you go for the 15 years before that, when Deion came, they didn't win anything during that period of time, right? And so North Carolina A&T, they had a good swing of 5-6 years, right? Well, probably about 7-8 years of Broadway, Sam Washington, right? And that changed completely. The narrative of North Carolina A&T changed in less than a decade, right? It don't take a long time, right? It really won't take a long time. It won't take a long time of winning for programs and thought processes to change. Because like you say, for example, there's kids who are 8, 9, 10 years old right now. If over the next decade, Prairie View wins 4 or 5 championships, all the people not thinking about what happened back when you can tell them the story about, man, I remember the old days when Prairie View, they don't know nothing about that. All they know is they keep seeing Prairie View go to Atlanta. That's all they know, right? And so winning is going to solve that problem, right? Getting over the hump, right? Not being just okay, not just being competitive, because that's what we've been over the last 20 years, right? We've been competitive. We've actually been very competitive. You talk about all the programs in the SWAC winning percentage, we at the top, right? Winning percentage wise, but what haven't we done? We haven't gotten over the hump, right? Southern, I see Adrian right here in the comments, right? The reality is Southern ain't won but 1 championship since we won a championship too. That's facts, right? That's an actual fact. SWAC championships, Prairie View has won since 2009. Southern got 1, right? So they're leaning, but they have that history that they lean on, right? You see what I'm saying? So only thing it's gonna take is a few years of winning of dominance. People's mindset would change.
So let me ask you this: largely Southern, and you know, last week I had Southern alumnus, and media personality Reggie Flood on, and he kind of explained that there was a, what he called them, the dead period, the dead years.
Yeah.
He said there was a large
until Pete Richardson.
Like from Mumford until Pete Richardson, which I think that's like a 40-year span where Southern was not very successful in football. Let me say this, is that Southern, in my opinion, and I know this is we're talking about PV, but Southern is, in my opinion, a bigger disappointment for this reason. They have the history, the culture, the support. They have everything in place right now. And that where they should win a championship, but they don't win. They haven't won a championship. And so with that being the case for Southern, Lionel, don't you think it's a pretty steep hill for y'all to climb? If a school
we
like
on the hill. We on the hill, Rocky. What you mean? We on the hill. Listen, all right, so let me tell you this, Rocky. Blockbuster had all they needed to win too, didn't they?
Yes, they did.
Yeah, you follow me, right?
Yes.
But that didn't stop Netflix from coming in and
innovate or evolve.
All right, so listen, nobody talk about Blockbuster right now.
No one.
You get what I'm saying?
20, anybody under 20 don't even know what Blockbuster is.
Even the old people don't talk about Blockbuster right now. They talk about Netflix and chilling and all that stuff too, right?
They've been erased.
All I'm saying is, the reality is, history don't matter if you don't learn from your own history in the first place, right? So this a Prairie View show, right? So I can. I'm showing love to all HBCUs, but now I'm getting in my PV versus everybody bag, right? Southern and Grambling are crumbling dynasties. I already said that, okay? And that's what they are, right? So the reality is, over the next 10, again, I'm gonna say it again. I'm just saying hypothetically, if over the next 10 years, Prairie View has a run similar to North Carolina A&T, at the end of the 10 years, nobody is talking about something that happened in the past. Nobody is talking about, Grambling being this great program or whatever it may be, right? No, they're going to say PV is at the top of the hill. Just like when A&T was running it, they was at the top of the hill. Just like when Alcorn's running SWAC, Alcorn's at the top of the hill. And guess what? The reality is these things go to these phases. If we go back in history, it goes through. That's what Jackson's in that phase right now. You know what I'm saying? Before that, Alcorn was in that phase. Before that, you saw Grambling in the phase. You see what I'm saying? So it goes through these phases. There's nothing that says that Prairie View can't go through a run like that.
You know, Lionel, as we talk about this, one thing I think Jackson State did in that realm is they took a chance.
Mm-hmm.
They took your old AD, installed him as AD, and he took a huge swing.
Yep.
And
connected.
Say what you want. It transformed their program to where they're probably most relevant program in FCS, North Dakota State included. I'll still say they're probably most relevant even today when you talk about FCS school. The Jackson State brand is just crazy, right? But you guys, AD Golf took another approach. Because I think he took the approach to get a seasoned championship level coach installed at Prairie View as head coach. And in your opinion, was that the move, or should he have taken a Ed Reed or a Ray Lewis or what is that? Is Coach Jackson what y'all need? And explain to me why.
I think so. I mean, listen, people that know on the show, right? Before I ain't know who that guy was gonna be. I ain't gonna lie, right? You know what I'm saying? But when I looked at everything and put everything together, what I look for, because for me, right, when I look at what the matrix should be, my matrix said a D2 coach, right? Who's come up, who's been a coordinator, who's been a head coach before, right? And then somebody that can recruit Texas. And when I put those parameters in place, I was saying, man, really Tremaine Jackson is the best guy out of all the guys that I feel like could fit that model, right? Because when I look back in history, that's what I see that's been successful over the course of time. D2 coaches, right, who've been a head coach before, who've been a coordinator before, they've had success over the history of the SWAC, right? So that's the model that I was looking for, and I think Tremaine Jackson fit that, perfectly. Now, the bravado and everything, that I didn't even know that was gonna come out like it has, right? But listen, I'm so happy we got that extra cherry on top, because I think that's exactly what we needed, right? There's a reason why I do some of the stuff I do, right? When you talk about the fan base and what you're trying to do there, right? For just the casuals, right? Listen, now I'm like, oh, cool. I can sit back a little bit sometimes now, right? You know what I'm saying? Because Coach Jackson, he gonna do it himself, right? And so I really think he is the perfect guy, right? Because we needed an experienced guy. I never thought we needed an Ed Reed or a Ray Lewis type or anything, right? Because we got the facilities, we got the program, we can get the funding. Those things really ain't the issue. It's having a guy who can present it well, right? Having a guy who knows how to put it together and how to lead and how to manage. And so yeah, I think Coach Jackson was the right guy.
One of the things, I kind of had an inside look at Coach Jackson because my co-host of HBCU Coaches Corner, Coach Johnny Cole,
right,
he worked under Johnny Cole for many years. And the one thing Coach Cole is not only a great coach, the track record tells you, but he knows other great coaches. When he when he told me when TC Taylor was hired, he was like, TC's gonna be all right. Don't worry about him. He's gonna be all right. You know what I mean? It took him a year to get his sea legs. He goes off and wins a championship. He also said this. He said about some other coaches who are no longer in the coaching. He was like, I don't think that coach has what it takes. He's too quiet. He's too subdued. They need somebody with a little more out there, And he not only does he understand what good coaches, he understands what these institutions need. And the moment the PV job came open, Coach Cole was like, this is who they need. if they do this, that's a home run. They better.
Yeah.
And I think there were some other things working with Coach Jackson, but he knew that they needed to get Coach Jackson. And he would have, of course, he's a TSU guy through and through. He would have wanted them to get, him to be at TSU the year before, but that didn't work out. They chose Coach Disman. I see that you guys are very happy with Coach Jackson. I have my own opinion of Coach Jackson, but among the coaches that are in the SWAC right now, where do you think he ranks among the coaches that are in the SWAC? And I'm based on criteria. I'm giving you track record.
Yeah.
Things of that nature.
Well, I did a 2025 head coach ranking show. You know what I'm saying? So for anybody who want to check that out, you can do that at PV versus everybody. But I think, man, he got to be somewhere near the top, right? Because you talk about the coaches that's in the league. You only got one right now, right, that have won the championship, right? And that's Coach T.C. Taylor. So after him, it's kind of like, what are you using for your criteria, right? What are you using to judge, right? Are you using how they recruit, using how they coach, using, what their past has been, right? And so I know people are going to have different things based on those elements, right? And we could judge based on what criteria they give me. But when I looked at it, I say, man, he got to be 2, 3, right? Maybe you have Terrence Graves right at number 2. I can understand somebody having him there because he's being able to lead Southern to win a SWAC West, right? And he's done it in the SWAC. But you can't have him that much lower than that as far as what he's done in the past. And again, I know a lot of people use Valdosta and say, well, Valdosta's a power. Valdosta has expectations, right? I mean, those expectations make you go figure it out. But Coach Jackson didn't have necessarily the resources. He had to go figure out the resources at Valdosta, at that D2 program, right, that had a lot of expectations, which is another reason I knew this guy would be great here, right? Now having more resources, but being a guy who had to, he had to be the counselor and be the head coach, right? Like, he had to be game day operations and go figure out how to go, manage the scholarship budget, right? So he's been able to do a lot of things. Now coming in where you got some more resources, some more manpower, right, you can use. I think he put him just in the perfect place. And listen, when people believe you, bro, they're willing to support you. And the reality of the situation is a lot of people just really didn't believe it before. Because one, you've not done it before, and I don't really see the results that make me want to open my pocketbook up. Whether you should open it up or not, right? Well, that's a completely different discussion. But now being in a position where you have somebody who can lead you and make you believe, right? Make you see the vision. People are willing to follow people who seem like they have a vision. And that's what Coach Jackson has, right? When he came in that first press conference and said, we're going to take I-20 because that's the shortest way to Atlanta. Best believe a lot of people said, I've been waiting for somebody who actually believes he can create a program that can win it. And I'm willing to support that.
So, I've looked at this PV schedule, and they have an interesting schedule. Let's take TSU off the board because it's the first game of the season. And as much as you want to say you'll know who they are at that point, you really can't know because you won't know who TSU is. You understand what I'm saying? Like even if they beat TSU by 50, you still don't know how good Prairie View is because, you don't know what TSU is. What game in this season will we find out who Prairie View is, the 2025 Prairie View team is? What game will y'all find out who Prairie View is?
Well, I understand, right? So you're taking TSU off the table. I have to say, it got to be Southern at their homecoming, right? I think that's the reality is that's going to be the team that majority of people choose to again repeat, especially in the SWAC West where you feel like there's a lot of a lot of parity, right? And so I think Southern is the team that most people will look at and say, okay, defense should come back strong. And so, defense, at the end of the day, he'll win championships. That's what they say, right? And so I think Southern is probably going to be the team that you see majority of, talk about the media, I think coaches, SIDs, and also just the general population. I think Southern is probably going to be the team that they look at the top. And that game is I think going to be the one that I think people will say, no matter what is done before, no matter if we beat TSU, beat Grambling, beat Alcorn, because I think most people are looking at those teams as down, right? But I think the Southern game is going to solidify in most people's mind, who this Prairie View team is. It's going to be in the middle of the season too as well, right? And so I think by that time people will say, okay, they legit or are they not legit? Because not going to do that with Northwestern, not going to do that with UTR, RGV either, right? Not those programs. So I think it's going to be the Southern game.
So this is what I predict. And it's funny that you say that. The one thing I will say is that you'll know exactly who Southern is on October 18th. Because they would have played Alabama State, they would have played Mississippi Valley, and they would have played Jackson State. So you will know exactly who Southern is on October 18th.
Mm-hmm.
If it goes like I think it'll go, y'all will put them out their misery on that day in that regard. It won't be a homecoming, it'll be a homegoing. Because I believe I see them losing. I see them losing against Alabama State. I see them losing against Jackson State. And then on October 18th, if y'all defeat, and they have a sensational homecoming. I'm talking a sensational homecoming.
Mm-hmm.
But if y'all are able to handle business on that day, y'all will turn a homecoming into a homegoing. And that'll take Southern off the board, I think, for the SWAC vying for the SWAC championship. And then y'all will have a pretty clear path. Y'all will know what y'all need to do in order to win it after that point. Do you see it that way as well?
Yeah, I mean, I see it that way. I don't even think that's why, to me, you took Texas Southern off the table, right? I still like Texas.
No, I don't think you'll
I
know
know
who
because the
you
game
are.
is just so. Yeah, it's so early on, right? You know what I mean? So I get your thought process there, but I think Texas Southern, I still like Texas Southern. I'm not gonna lie, right? You know what I mean? So for me, I think Texas Southern is really that. I think that Labor Day Classic is gonna be huge. I really think so. I'm happy we got 12 games starting the year after, right? Because now we get to get a game before Texas Southern game, right? You know what I mean? And no matter if we've been down, and I like that. I want Texas Southern to be better, right? I want to beat them better. I don't want to beat them worse, right? Because I think having Texas Southern good, having Prairie View good, makes the Labor Day Classic be what it should be, right? I think that game should be held in higher regard and higher esteem, but it can't be if one or both programs, right, aren't on their P's and Q's, right? You know what I'm saying? So I like that Texas Southern is looking and feeling confident. And I like that Prairie View is feeling confident. To me, it makes for a great clash. And I think I really feel like they're going to finish second, right? You know what I'm saying? Whoever win that game is I feel like going to win the SWAC West. Whoever loses it is going to finish second.
So the gentleman, Casanova, I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but
those aren't SWAC games for them this year. Yeah.
But that's not the point I was making. My point was making is
you don't know who they are by
enough. You will know who they are based on who they play. They would have played what you would consider a bottom feeder, which is Mississippi Valley, right? And they would have played a top level team, which is Jackson State. They also would have played a team that, in a lot of people's opinion, if Andrew Body ends up being who I think he is, that team is going to vie for a Eastern Division championship. So again, you will know.
He ain't got to be who you think he is, really. If he could just, see, we're going to really learn Eddie Robinson this year too, right? Because is it Ryan, is it Eddie, right? But if that defense can still be close to what it's been in the last 2 years, Body don't have to be what he was a few years ago in Texas Southern for Alabama State to be dangerous then. He really just got to be comparable, to be honest. You know what I'm saying?
Competent quarterback.
Yeah, he got to be just competent, to be honest.
Yeah, but like I say, man, so again, I have a lot of, I think we'll find out. Last year I was high on Prairie View. but I actually thought Alcorn was going to win the West.
Hmm.
This year, I don't have any expectations for Alcorn.
Yeah.
What I really believe this year is going to be is PVs to lose. And I say it like this. There is not a coach on the West Side with the pedigree of Coach Jackson. And you can point out Terrence Graves as being comparable. I can't, because he hasn't won a conference championship. He hasn't won a division championship. He's won a couple Bayou Classics. And last year, he had a pretty good run, having some fourth quarter miraculous comebacks.
Rabbit foot. We call it the rabbit foot last year.
Monkey toe. You know what I mean? But in the games that matter, his teams didn't have a good showing. Like again, in the SWAC championship, they didn't have a good showing. And then when they played Jackson State the first time, they didn't have a very good showing. So with that being said, I just think this is Prairie View, and I hate to put that much pressure on Coach Jackson in his first year, but I think
the pressure on himself.
I think Prairie View's to lose.
He put the pressure on himself, right? You know what I'm saying? And when I talk to the players, right, I'm like, hey man, y'all got a lot of eyes on y'all now from what Coach Jack doing, and all of them are in unison and just like, and that's exactly the way we want it, right? You know what I'm saying? So I think again, when you talk about having a visionary, it spills over into those that are following, right? And so I think you're seeing it across the staff. I think you're seeing that across the players, even in the admin, the athletic department, right? So it's definitely, changing. You know what I mean?
And see, Vark is my man, and I appreciate Vark for tuning in. And he says, and he's talking about Graves. He won plenty of championships under Pete. So did Eric Dooley. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? And again, if championships as an assistant coach was a true barometer of how you'll be as a head coach, then there'd be a lot more championships out there.
No. Listen, that's like saying I had nephews and nieces. Hey, listen, you ain't got your own yet. All right? It's different out here. All right? It's different out here.
Yeah, man. Yeah. Hey, Lionel, man. Hey, we've been on here just about an hour, man. I'm not going to, I know they want to call in, but I'll tell them if they want to say something to you, they can tune in to PV versus everybody. Tell them where they can find you in.
That's true. That's true. Hey, man, I appreciate you again, Rocky, for having me on. Right now, your slate is clean, by the way. You're not Rocky the Rattler right now, all right? Your slate is clean. You get a chance. You get a whole new beginning. You know what I mean? But no, I appreciate you. Appreciate, as Coach called him, Coach Campbell, right? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And obviously, I love what Coach is doing. I love the HBCU. I love what they're doing and kind of getting the old coaches to connect, right? I hope they continue to do that. I think that's powerful, man. And they're going to show our product so great and so good, right? So I can't wait to see what they do this year. But, yeah, man, y'all can find me over on PV versus everybody on all platforms. It's on Instagram, on X, of course, and also on YouTube, man. Listen, we're pushing toward 1,000 subscribers. We're almost there in the 800s now. So if you guys have checked the program out, or if you have not yet, man, but you want to show some love, man, just head over there, man, and just subscribe to the channel. Check out what we got going on. Right now, we're actually going through deep dives of different programs. We just talked about Southern programs, talked about Alabama A&M and Texas Southern. And so we got some more programs up and coming too as well.
What kind of access, what kind of access are you getting to the program and things of that nature? Lionel, are you going to have access to players and coaches and administration and stuff like that?
Yeah, I got access to the administration, you know what I'm saying, and the coaches as well. They wanted to kind of wait, you know what I mean, on really, deep diving with the players, because like Coach Jackson said, right, like we got the spring team, we got the summer team, we've got the team, right? So the reality is, he's like, hey, listen, these guys got to come out and battle to see who gonna be where, right?
But who's some of the guys on the team that you look forward to watching this year, man? That's kind of what
Listen, Sterling Roberts is the first guy that just jumps out, man. Just the size, just what he's done in Valdosta, right, and just the work ethic. I mean, you just see him out there daily, right? You know what I'm saying? Putting in the work in that linebacker court and linebacker room. So I'm really excited for him, and obviously being a leader, right, in that 212 defense, of being able to pass on to other guys as well. So he's someone I'm excited to see. Man, Trevor Randall is a guy at ULM the last 2 years, 89% coverage grade. I'm super excited to see him, you know, as a guy who is coming over, who's done it right on, at FBS level. I'm excited to see him in the program. Also, when you talk about running back room, Brandon Campbell, we just got him over from the University of Houston. He spent time there, also at UMass, right? And so I already thought that room was going to be very competitive, but obviously adding him to the room is going to be nice. As a guy who has a lot of experience too, right? At University of Houston and UMass. So excited to see what he brings there. And man, Jacoby Banks, I think this spring, I think he has popped off on everybody's radar. The do everything guy at Memphis. They put him at running back. They put him at wide receiver, right? We also got another guy, Korea Powell, did the same thing in the JUCO ranks, right? Saw him at running back, saw him at wide receiver. So I'm really interested in seeing both of them in this scheme that Coach Buckner has, right? You know what I'm saying, in the wide receiver room. But yeah, man, I'm really excited. The one room that I'm also excited for is the offensive line. I ain't gonna lie. The meat eaters is my co-host column, right? You know, the meat eaters. So we got a couple guys over there. Dylan Spencer coming from UCA. Got to see him at the camp that we did put on King of the Hill. And hearing him coach the guys, right, was like, that made me even more excited about what this offensive line could be, right? When I'm just seeing him like in that element of coaching up the younger high school guys, man. And so I'm really excited for that O-line room as well to see what they're going to be able to bring. Because I feel like we got the dynamic back. So like, hey, can you just give them a hold this year, right? So that was a couple of guys that kind of pop off. There's a couple more, but I mean,
well, one of the reasons, I had talked to Coach Cole. Coach Cole was on campus a couple weeks ago. He was watching the guys train. He was talking to the coaches, and he was like, Rock, they look amazing. He says when you look at them, they look amazing. He says, and so I asked Coach, I said, Coach, what do you think they're gonna do at quarterback? He says, Coach, they seem very happy with what they have at quarterback.
Yeah.
And I say, well, who they have other than what they had last year? And he's like, they got the guys they had last year, and they're very happy with those guys they have. They really are. And and so that's, that was interesting to me, because I thought that was the first position that they were going to kind of address. And it seems like they're willing to go with the guys that were there. And that only tells me that the coaches feel like the quarterback room was straight. They just maybe underachieved due to the situation and circumstances they were put in.
So they brought a couple guys in, right? They did bring in Tevin Carter from Tennessee State, who was, back up to Draylon Ellis last year. He did a lot of running last year. Big 6'4" kid, originally went to Memphis University before going to Tennessee State. They also brought in the JUCO guy from Garden City, Tyler Nelson. And then also a guy who was at ULM his true freshman year, Blake Murphy, who also went to JUCO last year. But yeah, I think they have been really, really happy with what they've seen from the guys who was even here last year. And I think, one thing that I also, when I started really putting my eyes on Coach Jackson as a guy that I really liked back before he got hired, right? When I was just kind of looking at different guys, I looked at some of his interviews too, right? That he did in the past. One thing that he said in past interviews when he went on different shows was, he said when he has a kid that he's working with, the first thing that he does is not look at the kid, right? And like, okay, why can't he do this? Or why can't he get this done or accomplish this or learn this concept? So the first thing he look at is himself or his coaches. They say, hey, man, I have to learn. Everybody doesn't receive information the same way, right? I have to figure out how to get it across to them to where it makes sense. It's not for me to just take a scholarship for him or kick him out. It's like, no, if he got the talent, then my question is, what is wrong on my end, on my coach's end, right? And that always has stood out in my head, especially when I just look at recruiting, man, because a lot of the guys that I see people grab, sometimes I'm even shocked. I'm like, man, I see what that guy did at this school, but yet this school is still willing to take a chance on him. What do they feel like they can do or have? What's the difference, right? Because he got the size, right? He got the prototypical body, but he didn't get it done here. And I'm like, man, coaching is the thing though that you can't. That's the thing that we don't see behind the scenes, right? Is the coaching. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like they feel that we can accomplish things with certain guys here. Even when I talked about we talked about the O-line room. It's like, hey man, you got to look at the type of scheme they was using. You got to look at what they was asking guys to do. And so again, these guys have done it before, right? They've done it and been successful. So the only thing I can do is say, hey man, I gotta because one thing about Coach Jackson too that I mentioned too before on the show, he's a defensive guy, right? The 212 is gonna do. The DB room. I'm super excited. I ain't gonna lie. That's my guy. I'm waiting to see the DB room, the secondary. But listen, every year he was at Valdosta State, different coordinator. Them boys still was, average crazy amount of points on the board, right? On the offensive side, every year with 3 different coordinators, right? So he obviously also understands something about what he's trying to do with this air raid system too. And so I gotta trust him to know that, man, you must know exactly what you're looking for, even on the offensive side of things too. And listen, in the spring game, I can't lie, it didn't look the same as what I saw the year before. But I had to also remind myself that, hey, some of these guys, the numbers they put up before they got here last year for their first year was different than what I saw last year. So maybe something just went wrong last year that was actually out the norm for them, because what I saw in the spring, numbers wise, made me real happy. Okay, you know what I'm saying? But so yeah, they happy.
Yeah,
right
man. Hey, again, man. Hey, I can't. I first off, man, you've been sensational on the show tonight, man. I want to thank you for coming on.
Appreciate it.
Man, this turned out to be so much better than I ever could imagine, Lionel, man. And I'll continue to support your podcast and tune in to PV versus everybody. But anything you want to leave the people with before you get out of here, man?
Nah, man. Again, man, I appreciate all y'all. Shout out to all the fathers out there. Rocky, man, shouts out to you. I know Father's Day was yesterday too as well. And obviously you raised a beautiful daughter who's about to graduate. That shows something about who you are as a man, right? And as a father, you know what I'm saying? And so all the other guys out there, man, and it's all love. I love everybody that's jumping on all the shows. I love how we kind of connected and got this HBCU camaraderie. I'm really hoping that I see some other guys pop up for some other schools, because I think if we're going to have our brand out there and demand from HBCU Goals and the ESPNs and the Netflix and whoever that we'll pay certain stuff, right? I think we need to cover ourselves like we really worth that, right? So that means that can't no program not be covered like that. Like we need somebody covering Valley to where like you can go there and like we get every information, all because it's big for our players too, right? Like we need to know our players. We need to also uplift our guys as well, so that it's not just the 1-2 guys who get all SWAC, but man, we know all the guys across the board. So I just want to encourage anybody out there who follows your specific program at school and man, you really thinking about jumping out there, I really encourage you, go ahead and jump out there, man, and get it going, because you're going to have the support of the rest of the HBCU podcast and media community. We definitely going to support you. I'm definitely going to support you, right? You know what I'm saying? So that way we can because all it does is uplift all of us as a brand in the first place, right? So, and again, go ahead and over to PV versus everybody, man. Show some love, subscribe to the channel. Because listen, when they drop that list, July 16th, you already know it's gonna be some trouble, because I'm gonna be on there.
Are you going to SWAC Media Day?
Nah, I'm not going to SWAC Media Day. No. What I'm gonna do over there? I can do everything over there. I can do over here. Okay?
You got. Hey, what you say? Who you got access to? You got access.
I would go spend a couple of days. It would really just be to connect with y'all, right? Just be to connect with people that I see y'all. That would really be the reason. You know what I'm saying? But nah, not this year. My birthday's the 15th though, right? So it's really SWAC Media Day is always a bad time anyway, because it's like 14 or 15 or 16. I mean, that's my birthday on 15th of July. So. I can't finish birthday.
I understand that. Hey, are you also available to peer? Because one of the things I see in this space is, man, there's not enough collaboration in the space. I think more people should get to know who Lionel is and PV versus everybody and share. Are you open to peer? I mean, it was easy to book you on this podcast. It was simple. I contacted you via Twitter. We set up a date, time, boom, it happened. Are you also open to doing this kind of stuff with other people as well, just so we can put it out there?
Yeah, I've done some stuff with my guys, Pooh and Ant. I know Ant personally, even from Monroe, right? So yeah, I'm willing to jump. I did stuff with Seawells, right? So I'm always willing to jump on other people's shows. And listen, if you invite me on, I'm gonna make sure everybody enjoy themselves. All right, you know what I'm saying? That's one thing I'm gonna make sure I do. You know what I'm saying? Is make it worth your while. But yeah, so I have no problem with that, man. As long as my schedule allows. Because listen, I'm still out here working. You feel me? And I got a little.
I understand,
But
man. I had to get this one in today too, man. I worked a
exactly.
long day and I had to come in and make sure we got this one in, man.
You know what I'm saying?
Hey, Lionel, again, much love, everybody, man. I'm gonna get out of here along with Lionel. Please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Much love, everybody. I'm out.